Good morning, everybody. Good morning or afternoon, depending on where you're at. Good morning. Hello, hello, hello. Welcome in, everyone. This is my extra lives here. I'm going to try to catch up a little bit on the Cohen transcripts. I was unable to come on last night, so I am going to again try to do my best to read through Mr. Cohen's testimony. We are still on direct examination, so welcome in. I do have comments turned off, everyone, just so that I can try to get through a big chunk of Mr. Cohen's testimony today. Should be very interesting. I have read through his transcripts only one time before, so this will be my second reading, and I will make sure to have that title included in the name of the live and when I have it posted. Now, I did just finish posting this morning the fourth and final piece of Miss Stormy Daniels' testimony on my Tube of You, so that is available online if you are interested. So we do have David Pecker's testimony, Hope Hicks's testimony, and now Miss Stormy Daniels. So all of those are up on my Tube of You channel if you are interested, along with any of my other previous lives. So today, everyone, I do have comments off, and I do want to kind of dive right in here. We will continue on with Mr. Cohen's testimony. I am very determined to get through as much as we can over the next few days. So welcome, and welcome. So here's a picture again from one of our very talented courtroom sketch artists. And so let me just remind you of where we left off. So here are the transcripts. They are made available through the New York court system, which we're very thankful for. I had started on Thursday to read his direct examination. So we had gotten to page, and these are front back. Some of my transcripts are just on one side, but these are two-sided. So I was able to get us to page 3319, and that is where we left off. So again, this is all direct testimony from Mr. Cohen. He has been under cross-examination for quite a while and will continue his cross-examination on Monday. But this is his direct examination. So I will just pick up where I left off, and I'm planning to read for about an hour here, and then I will turn on comments so we can do a brief Q&A and see how that goes. So I'm going to go ahead and just dive right in. Just a friendly reminder, the blue is the New York or the government, and the green is Mr. Cohen. And what did you understand that to mean? He was going to pay it back. But it wasn't. Was it described at this point how that might occur? No, ma'am. After that call, did you have a call or call Mr. Pecker? Yes. And tell us a little bit about that conversation that you had with Mr. Pecker. I just wanted to make sure that I was being updated regarding the entire matter. Did you let him know on that call that you had overheard the conversation that he had with Mr. Trump? Yes. Now, let's put back up, if we could, please, 177A, Mr. Cohen's text with Dylan Howard, and the text on July 28th of 2016 through July 29th of 2016, and let's see if we can call those out. So it's Thursday, July 28th of 2016. It's from me to Dylan Howard. Can you call me? Dylan Howard responds back, I've not heard back from our guy yet, so no update. Let me call him this AM and get latest. Does that work? Who did you understand this guy to be? I believe it was Keith Davidson. And who was Keith Davidson in relation to this matter? Keith Davidson is an attorney that was representing Miss McDougal in this transaction. And did you understand from Dylan Howard that Mr. Davidson was doing the negotiation with AMI for Miss McDougal? Yes. Objection, Judge. Can you continue reading? I'm sorry. Objection, Judge. Can you continue reading? I'm sorry. Objection. Overruled. Okay. Same date, Thursday, the 28th of July of 2016, I sent a text to Dylan Howard. Yes, and thank you. Again, if you could read them just as they apply to July 29th. Sure. He then expressed to me they rejected the offer, told them to come back to me. It says my, but it's me, by EOD, which means end of day, with a realistic number. He agreed to that. He fears that she's been convinced to tell her story at ABC and really wants to. I implored my guy to get it done, all caps. He's getting back to me. Is that the last text? No. I'm sorry, I apologize. I then respond back to him, okay, to which he then responds to me, we're having a video conference with her next week to outline the opportunities we will present her to sign up with us. I then ask, do you know what day? And he responds to me, Monday or Tuesday. And I respond again, okay, thank you. Now, why were you pressing for this information from Dylan Howard? So, several things here. One, I wanted to know what the number was because I would have to report that to Mr. Trump. When they stated that they are having a video conference with her next week to outline the opportunities, I needed to know what day again so I could update Mr. Trump and he could have all the necessary information. Did you also speak to David Pecker around this time about how things were moving along in the negotiation with Karen McDougal and her lawyers? Yes. Was there some particular pressure that you felt at this point that AMI should get it done? Yes. What was that? There was the campaign, and we were concerned that this story was going to find its way to ABC, meaning ABC News. Now, let me direct your attention now to August 5th. Well, withdrawn. At some point in August now of 2016, so shortly after those texts, did you learn that indeed an agreement had been finalized between AMI and Karen McDougal? Yes. And how did you learn that? I was told by David Pecker and Dylan Howard. And what was your understanding from them about what the terms of that agreement were going to be? The terms were going to be a compensation to her in the amount of $150,000. As well, they were going to provide her with 24 penned articles that would bear her name, as well as she was going to be on 2 covers of one of the various magazines that they owned. And did you have a conversation just between yourself and David Pecker about the parameters of this agreement with Miss McDougal? Yes. Did Mr. Pecker tell you that he felt the agreement was bulletproof? Yes. And what did you understand that to mean? That they got it, that this is locked down. We have prevented the story from being released on ABC News, and effectively the story has now been caught. And did you update Mr. Trump on that conversation? Yes, ma'am. And did you tell him that you had been told by David that the agreement was bulletproof? Yes. What was Mr. Trump's reaction to hearing that an agreement had been signed and done and that it was bulletproof? Fantastic. Great job. Now, did at some point Keith Davidson, the attorney for Karen McDougal, reach out to you after the agreement had been finalized with AMI? Yes. Were you familiar at the time with who Keith Davidson was? Yes. And how did you know him at the time? I had worked with Keith Davidson back in 2011 when there was a story that was out that dealt with Stormy Daniels, and in that story it was a website called thedirty.com, and Stormy actually wanted it to be taken down, and we had worked together to effectuate that. To take the story down from the website? Yes. Now, let me have you take a look, please, at People's Exhibit 62 in evidence. By the way, your communications with Keith Davidson were by phone, also by text? Yes, it was by phone, email, text. Did you also sometimes communicate with him on an encrypted application? Yes, ma'am. Taking a look at People 62, do you recognize that email? I do. And what was this email about? It's an August 5th, 2016 email sent by Keith Davidson to me, and it states, Michael, please call me at your convenience. Thanks. And this was after AMI had signed the deal with Karen McDougal. Yes. And did you end up having a call with Keith Davidson about the matter? I did. Could you describe just generally the substance of that call? Actually, do you know what? Let me just ask you, when you received this email, did you then call Keith Davidson? I did. As per his request? Yes. All right, so tell us, if you would, just briefly, what the conversation was with Keith Davidson. Great job. The boss, obviously very happy about it. The matter's now resolved. Did Keith tell you that he had resolved the matter? Yes. And that was you telling him that the boss would be very pleased and thank you and good job? Yes. What's your understanding of why Keith Davidson reached out to you after this deal was concluded? Objection sustained. Now, after AMI finalized the deal with Karen McDougal and paid the $150,000 for the life rights and also for the other that she was going to be doing, did you have any conversations with Mr. Pecker about Mr. Trump reimbursing AMI for the money that AMI put out? Yes. Tell us a little bit about that. So David had asked me when he should anticipate receiving or being paid back the $150,000. He needed to get the $150,000 and he wanted to get the $150,000 back because it was too much money for him to hide from the CEO of the parent company. And he also just laid out $30,000 previously. So he was putting pressure on me to speak to Mr. Trump and to get the money back. Did you have several conversations with Mr. Pecker where he urged you to try to move it along and get him repaid? Yes. I don't know if I would characterize it as urge as much as he insisted. Was he upset about it? Very. To take a tea break for one moment, everyone. So, directing your attention now to about September of 2016, did you have lunch with Mr. Pecker while he pressed you further on that matter? Yes. Can you tell us a little bit about that matter? So he asked me if I would meet him at his favorite Italian restaurant, and I went to meet him. And again, he expressed his anger that I need to get this money back. And I said, look, Mr. Trump told you that he would pay you back, so he'll pay you back. Did you, after the lunch meeting with Mr. Pecker, where he was, as you say, upset about not being repaid, did you talk to Mr. Trump about that? Did you inform him of that? I did. And what did Mr. Trump say, in substance, about David Pecker's concerns about getting paid back? Don't worry, I'll take care of it. And did you discuss with Mr. Trump David Pecker's request for that money back on one occasion or more than one occasion? Several occasions. Around the same time, did you have any conversations with Mr. Trump regarding other stories that AMI may have had in the past and some concerns about this? Yes. Can you tell the jury a little bit about that? So David had expressed to me that obviously the relationship with Mr. Trump goes back many, many years, and there's a file drawer or a locked drawer, as he described it, where files that relate to Mr. Trump existed. And at that point in time, David was being considered for the position of CEO at Time Inc., Time Magazine. And one of the concerns that I had, that I expressed to Mr. Trump, was if he goes, there is a series of papers there that can relate to you. And what was your concern specifically with respect to those stories and Mr. Pecker leaving AMI? Well, I didn't know what those stories were, and nobody was discussing that with me, but they would be open for use, meaning that other people might get their hands on them? Yes, because we didn't know who the potential CEO or replacement would be. And was Mr. Trump concerned about that at that point as well? Yes. Did you discuss with Mr. Pecker these concerns about whether other stories AMI might have in a locked drawer? Yes. And what did Mr. Pecker say? You could technically buy them. We will figure out a way for you to take control over them. And around that same time, were you having some discussions with David Pecker about purchasing from AMI the life rights to Karen McDougal's story? Yes, that was all part of the same transaction. So let me direct your attention now to September 6th of 2016. Did you record a conversation that you had with Mr. Trump about purchasing from AMI the life rights to Karen McDougal's story and these other stories that AMI might have? Yes. Now, during that time, the 10 years that you worked for Mr. Trump, how many conversations with him did you tape? None other. So this was the only one? Yes, ma'am. Why did you feel it was important to tape this one conversation? It was so I could show it to David Pecker, and that way he could hear the conversation, so he would know that we are going to be paying him. Mr. Trump is going to be paying him back because it became a regular conversation between the two of us that he needed to be paid back, and I also wanted him to remain loyal to Mr. Trump. So how did you go about recording this conversation with Mr. Trump? I had my cell phone in hand and I put it on voice memo. All Apple iPhones have it, and I hit record and I walked in. Walked in where? To Mr. Trump's office. And where did you put your phone when you recorded this conversation with Mr. Trump? It was in my hand. Did you sit down to talk to him? Were you standing when you had this conversation with him? Or were you seated, if you can recall? I don't recall. About how far away were you from Mr. Trump when you made this recording using your phone? On the opposite side of his desk. To your knowledge, was Mr. Trump aware that you were recording the conversation? No, ma'am. I'm handing you a thumb drive that, among other exhibits, contains People's 246, which is a recording, and People's 248, a transcript. Thank you. You're welcome. Have you previously reviewed that recording, People's 246, and the transcript, People's 248, on that thumb drive? Yes, ma'am. How do you know that you received those two exhibits previously? Because it has my initials on it. Oh, tea break. And would you say it be the thumb drive? I'm sorry, the thumb drive has my initials on it. Okay, and does it also have the date or just your initials? It does. You don't have to pull out the date, but it has the date in your initials. Now, People's 246, the recording of the conversation that you taped Mr. Trump on September 6th of 2016, is that an exact copy of the original audio recording that you made on your phone? Yes. And whose voices are on that audio recording? Several people. Who are they? Mr. Trump, mine, Rona Graff. When you say Rona Graff, was she in and out? Rona Graff came in and out, but you certainly hear her voice. She's executive assistant, again, to Mr. Trump. Now, what generally, before we listen to it, is discussed that's on the taped audio recording? That I had been working with Alan Wesselberg in terms of, well, let me stop you a second. I'm sorry. Just in terms of generalities, when you first walked in, was Mr. Trump on the phone? Yes. Does the audio recording capture some of his conversation on the phone? Yes. And did you discuss partly the purchase of materials from AMI? Yes. Did you also discuss another matter with him before you got to that? Yes. What generally was that? Charleston. I was referring to a piece of property in Charleston. Okay, was it also generally a discussion of some divorce papers? Yes. That you had with Mr. Trump at the time? Yes, that's another topic that came up. Is that audio recording People's 246 a true and accurate representation of the conversation you had with Mr. Trump on that day, on September 6th of 2016? Yes. Okay, now I mentioned a transcript, People's 248, that you also reviewed on that thumb drive. Did you compare that closely with the recording of the conversation? I did. Now, is that transcript just a portion of what's on the recording? Yes. And does it reflect the portion of the recording related to the purchase of those materials from AMI? Yes, ma'am. And is that transcript a true and accurate representation of that portion of the conversation regarding the purchase of the materials from AMI? Yes, there was one change that was made to one word. Okay, and is that what is currently the transcript that you reviewed? Yes. That you reviewed carefully against the tape, is it a true and accurate in terms of the words that were spoken by both yourself and Mr. Trump? Yes, ma'am. I would like to now play, please, one time through for the jury, People's 246, and if we play it once in its entirety, thank you. Audio tape played in open court at this time. Now, Mr. Cohen, let me ask you, the first 2 minutes or so of the conversation were not related to the Karen McDougal matter, is that right? That's correct. That's when Mr. Trump was on the phone and when you were talking to him about some other divorce papers in Charleston, is that right? Yes, as well as Pastor Mark Burns. So I'm now going to ask for us to listen to just some portions. We're going to stop and start it. I'm going to ask you a few questions. If we could now play the recording from minute 2 and 4 seconds to 2 and 15 seconds. And then I will ask you a few questions. Audio tape being played in open court at this time. First of all, who is our friend David? It's referring to David Pecker. And what did you mean by I need to open a company regarding the transfer of all of the information? What were you talking about? Well, to open up an LLC, and the LLC would be the beneficial owner of all the information that was contained in that drawer that David was referring to. And all that information, including also the Karen McDougal matter, as well as the Karen McDougal matter. What was the reason for talking about opening up a company in order to have separation, keeping it away from Mr. Trump? Now, why was it important to keep it away from Mr. Trump, the purchase of that information? For privacy purposes and for the benefit of Mr. Trump. Now, you didn't refer to Mr. Pecker by his full name. You just said David. Why didn't you use his full name? And was this sort of typical for this conversation? It wasn't necessary. Mr. Trump knew who I was referring to. It was an ongoing conversation that we had been having. Can we now play the recording from 2 minutes and 15 seconds to 2 minutes and 21 seconds? Thank you. Audio being played in open court at this time. You mentioned within your conversation with Mr. Trump, Alan Weisselberg. Yes. Who was he at the time? Alan Weisselberg was the chief financial officer of the Trump Organization. And why did you tell Mr. Trump that you were setting up the LLC and discussing it with Alan Weisselberg? Because Mr. Trump had previously directed me to speak with Alan Weisselberg about getting this matter handled. And why were you letting Mr. Trump know that you had been in discussion with Mr. Weisselberg about this? Because we were going to need money and we were going to need to open up the LLC and to resolve this issue. And Mr. Weisselberg's role at the time you said was chief financial officer. He handled all of the finances. It was every penny that came in or out went through Alan's office. And so this was partly why Mr. Trump directed you to work with him, and this was not unusual for you to work with Mr. Weisselberg on financial matters regarding Mr. Trump. Is that right? Correct. Now, what did you understand Mr. Trump to mean when he said, what do we have to pay for this? What do we got to pay for this? We were referring to the $150,000 that was advanced by AMI in order to purchase the life rights of Karen McDougal. So when Mr. Trump said, what do we got to pay for this $150,000, what was your understanding about the state of Mr. Trump's knowledge at this point about how much money it was going to take to purchase this? Objection overruled. He already knew, based upon conversations with David, which is why he mentioned the number 150. Now we can play the rest of the tape through, just to the end. Audio tape played in open court at this time. Now, what was the significance of all that stuff that was mentioned? All that stuff is referring to the information that David Pecker had accumulated over the years of Mr. Trump that was in the alleged locked door or drawer, and including also the Karen McDougal story, and including Karen McDougal. Now, what was the conversation about? Someone may be getting hit by a truck? What was that about? As I said before, Alan Weisselberg was being considered, David Pecker was being considered for the CEO position of Time Incorporated, and the concern was the information, so all the stuff refers to that. Now, you mentioned the word financing, and Mr. Trump asked you about that. Can you explain that? That was not the best usage of the word. What I really meant was funding, not financing. And what did you mean by what you had, what needed to be funded? How much money needed to be paid? Paid to who? Paid to David Pecker, AMI. Okay, and is that what you understood by we will have to pay him something? Yes. By we will have to pay him something? Yes. What did you understand Mr. Trump to mean by saying pay with cash? Well, to pay in green, which would obviously be one way to avoid any type of paper transaction. But that's not the way I thought was the best way to do it. And so is that why you said no? Correct. Do you want to take a break, Your Honor? It's up to you. Is this a good time? Yes. Okay. Thank you. All right. Jurors, let's go ahead and take our morning recess. I will see you in about 15 minutes. You may step out. All rise. Jury exits. You may be seated, sir. You can step out. Thank you. We do have our morning recess here. We'll take just a tea moment, and then we will continue on here. Okay, just a friendly reminder, at the top of the page is the page number that I'm on in the transcripts, 3341, and it sets out who the witness is, Michael Cohen here, and what's happening, which is the direct examination being done by the state's attorney who is listed here. So it should be in frame, just making sure I've got everything. Yep, there we go. All rise, Part 59 is back in session. Mr. Blanche, in the past, my practice has always been when there is a tape or something like that produced into evidence, I normally give some sort of limiting instruction along the lines of jurors. I just want you to know that the transcript is not evidence. The transcript is just an aid to assist you, and it is the tape that's evidence. No one has requested that instruction. Do you want to leave it like that, or would you want me to give it? We would. I believe the transcript is an evidence. It is an evidence as an aid, and I'm going to give that instruction. If Your Honor can give it even right now, since we finished that part of the testimony, that would be great. Sure. Let's bring the witness back, please. Witness entering. By the way, that is not unusual for a judge to pull counsel aside and say, this is how I usually do things in my courtroom, just an FYI. So that's not unusual whatsoever. Courtroom man was properly seated. You're still under oath, Mr. Cohen. Yes, sir. Michael Cohen, here and called as witness, being previously sworn, was examined and testified further as follows. Let's get the jury, please. All rise. Jury entering. Whereupon the jury entered the courtroom and was properly seated. You may be seated. Case on trial continued. All jurors are present and properly seated. Jurors, just one quick instruction before we continue with the testimony. You heard the tape played, and you have also seen the transcript. I just want to remind you that the evidence in this case is the tape itself. The transcript has been offered to you merely as an aid to assist you in understanding what is in evidence, and that is in the tape. The transcript is also in evidence, but again, it is the tape itself that is in evidence. Thank you, Your Honor. Continued direct examination. Now, Mr. Cohen, when we ended off before the break, I was asking you about Mr. Trump saying something about paying in cash. Why did you think it was a bad idea for Mr. Trump's suggestion that this be paid in cash? Because we needed to acquire the information, the documents, and I believe that the proper way to do it would be by check and make it appear to be a proper transaction. Now, at the end of the tape, it cuts off, and there's a voice that's heard at the end of the tape before it cuts off. Whose voice is that? It's my voice. And what do you recall about that recording cut off the way with your voice? Because I received an incoming phone call. And what do you understand you were saying in that last piece when you hear your voice? Hello, are you there? Now, why did you, when you tried to take that call, you said the incoming call you thought was coming in, did the recording of your conversation with Mr. Trump end at that point? Yes. And why did you try to take that call instead of continuing to tape the conversation with Mr. Trump. I must have believed it was an important phone call. Was there any other reason also that you were comfortable ending the tape? Yes. Tell us about that, please. I didn't want to record more. I already had enough that I would be able to show David Pecker so as to convince him that he was going to receive the $150,000 back. Now let's put up, please, for Mr. Cohen, what's in evidence, a page from People's Exhibit 400. Now, Mr. Cohen, have you had a chance to review this record, this AT&T record regarding your call history? Yes. And do you recognize it to be the AT&T record of calls to or from your cell phone ending in 0114? Yes. Does it appear to show an incoming call around the time that your recording of Mr. Trump cuts off? Yes. And does that record indicate a call at around that time that looks like it came in, perhaps and went to voicemail? It says so, yes. And do you recall, when you're trying to pick up that call, do you recall whether it connected or went to voicemail? I don't recall. You can take that down, please. Now, let's look at this next page. Does that appear to be a contact from your phone records, from your phone contacts? It is. Have you had a chance to review that against the AT&T records? I have. And does that indicate the number or person who's attached to the number of that incoming call at around the time that the recording's cut off? It does. And who does that number come back to according to your contacts? It comes back to Kathy Battle, who is the branch manager over at Capital One Bank. So is it your understanding that that call that came in? Yes. Based on the review of these records? Yes. You can take that down, thank you. Now, after the audio ended, you ended the audio recording by trying to pick up this call. Did you continue some conversation with Mr. Trump? Yes. And what was the gist of the conversation that you continued with Mr. Trump after the recording ended? I'm going to head over to Alan Wesselberg's office, and I will get back to him with more of an update. So, was there a really substantial conversation after the end of the taped recording? Yes. And when you say yes, was it substantially long conversation? No, it was not substantial. And at that point, as you withdrawn, you mentioned that the point of this recording was so that you could convince Mr. Pecker that Mr. Trump had to agree to repay the money, to appease him that he was going to receive the money back. Was there any reason to have any real further conversation with Mr. Trump about this at this time? No. Now I'm going to ask you to please put up People's 247. Now, Mr. Cohen, this is metadata from your phone regarding the audio tape of your conversation with Mr. Trump on September 6th of 2016. I want to ask you a question. After you made that audio recording using your phone, did you ever alter that recording? No. And is that recording exactly the same as the day you made it on September 6th of 2016? Yes. You can take that down, thank you. Now I want to go back to your conversation with Mr. Trump on that audio recording where you mentioned having spoken with Alan Wesselberg about setting this whole thing up. Do you remember that? I do. I just want to go back to you. Was it typical for you to discuss financial matters with Alan Wesselberg? It was typical, too, for everyone to discuss financial matters with Alan Wesselberg. And that was why. Because he was the chief financial officer of the company and was a long-serving, loyal employee to Mr. Trump. And so, was Mr. Wesselberg, to your knowledge, in charge of the finance and accounting functions at the Trump organization? Yes. One additional thing. Yes, sir. It was also because Mr. Trump would direct me to go speak to Mr. Wesselberg. Was that unusual either? No. To direct you to speak to Mr. Wesselberg about financial transactions? No. To your understanding, did Mr. Wesselberg report directly to Mr. Trump at the Trump organization? Yes. And I think you said Mr. Wesselberg was a long-standing executive employee there for many years? Yes, ma'am. Where was Mr. Wesselberg's office located in relation to Mr. Trump's office? Also on the 26th floor, towards the back. Whose office was closer to Mr. Trump's, yours or Mr. Wesselberg's? Well, initially it would have been pretty similar, but the second office that I moved into, What was your relationship like with Mr. Wesselberg at the time? It was very good. And did you observe how frequently Mr. Wesselberg interacted with Mr. Trump? Yes. And what did you observe? It was a regular basis. And from your experience working at the Trump Organization, would a deal of this magnitude, a $150,000 deal, have been done at the Trump Organization without Alan Wesselberg? Objection. Overruled. No, not. It wasn't even a deal of this magnitude. It was any deal would end up going through Alan. Alan handled all the finances coming in and out. Can you describe generally the conversation you had with Mr. Wesselberg about the McDougal transaction? So I went to Alan's office. I expressed to him that we need funding of $150,000 to consummate this transaction. Alan then said to me, well, if we do it from a Trump entity, that kind of defeats the purpose because the point is not to have the Trump name affiliated to this at all. It's really to create a barrier. And so he asked me to think about ways that we could raise the $150,000. Before we get to that for a moment, in terms of opening up a separate LLC to handle it, did you have a conversation with Mr. Alan Wesselberg about that? Objection. You can answer. No, I just told him I was going to open an LLC. Was there a discussion about doing that to make it more difficult to track directly to either Mr. Trump or the Trump Organization? It was in order to keep it separate. And approximately how many conversations do you think you had with Mr. Wesselberg about the McDougal transaction? Maybe 10, 12. Now, did there come a time that you had some conversations and began working with someone named Daniel Rothstein, associated with the AMI in terms of effectuating this transfer of rights from AMI to an LLC? Yes. And who was Daniel Rothstein, to your knowledge? He's an employee over at AMI. And by the way, you had Mr. Rothstein's contact in your phone as well? Yes. And did you communicate with him by phone? I did. And by email? Yes. Did you also on some occasions communicate with him by encrypted applications? I believe so. And why did you do that with him? In order to keep the matter secret. So let's show now, please, People's Exhibit 209 for identification. Do you recognize that document on your screen, sir? I do. What do you recognize it to be? This is a communication from Daniel Rothstein to me by encrypted app Signal. Are those a variety of communications over a number of days with Mr. Rothstein? Yes. By encrypted app Signal? Yes. Is this an exact copy of those communications between yourself and Mr. Rothstein using that encrypted app on the dates that are reflected in this record? Yes, ma'am. I offer People's Exhibit 209 into evidence. No objection, accepted into evidence. Thank you. Before we move on, everyone, I just have to make a note that this is the most classic way of entering evidence in during a trial. So if you ever wanted to know exactly what to say and how to get a piece of evidence in during trial, this is exactly how you would do it. So this is just textbook lawyering in a criminal case. Just make sure before I went too far. Okay, so no objection, accepted into evidence. Let me direct your attention to to September 7th of 2016. There's a text at 8:34 a.m. Can you read what's in that communication and explain what it is? This is just a communication from Daniel Rothstein to me stating, please find possible names. And he listed 5 different possible corporation names that he was going to use as the recipient of the assignment agreement. And what is the date of the first communication that Mr. Rothstein had with you? What's the date for that? September 7th of 2016. And what And was that just one day after you had taped the conversation with Mr. Trump about setting up an LLC to purchase the information from AMI? Yes, ma'am. So you started working with Mr. Rothstein promptly the next day on that matter? Yes. Just to clarify something, People's 209 are screenshots or photos of the communications you had with Mr. Rothstein? It was a screenshot sent to me, yes. Now, you mentioned an assignment agreement. What is the assignment agreement that he was referring to there? What he was referencing was to assign the life rights of Karen McDougal to the LLC entity that was being created. So it would be an assignment for AMI to the company that you set up. Yes. Now, if we can just scroll down. A little bit. Do you see an additional call in September following that communication? Yes. And then I will just ask you to read the communication on September 30th. September 30th of 2016, approximately, 1:36 p.m. I will be at your office in a few minutes. And do you know what that communication was about? Yes. What was it? It was about the assignment agreement. Was there a plan to sign it on that day? Yes, ma'am. We can take that down. Thank you. I want to now show the witness People's Exhibit 210. Do you recognize this document? I do. What do you recognize about it? What do you recognize it to be? It's an email from Daniel Rothstein to me on September 23rd of 2016. Can we scroll down to the next page of the exhibit? What is attached to the exhibit? Do you recognize it? I do. Is it a form assignment of license agreement? It's a non-filled in assignment of license agreement. And other than the redaction that are in the email in terms of redacting email addresses, is this an exact copy of an email from Mr. Rothstein to you on September 23rd of 2016, attaching the non-filled in form assignment of licensing agreement? Yes, ma'am. I offer People's Exhibit 210 into evidence. No objection. 210 is accepted into evidence. Can we display that for the jury now, please? This is what I would submit for filing. Sorry, wrong page. Can we display that for the jury, please? Flip. Is that an assignment template agreement that Mr. Rothstein had mentioned in his messages with you earlier on the screenshot exhibit? The screenshot messages? It is. Now, did you go ahead, you can take that down. Did you go ahead and form the LLC, the company that was going to handle the payment to AMI for the life rights to Karen McDougal's story? Yes. And at the time, what was the name of the company that you formed to handle the transfer of rights? Resolution Consultants, LLC. And if we can just put that up for now, People's Exhibit 215. Do you recognize this document? I do. What do you recognize it to be? It is an email from Patty, who is an employee over at Delaney Corporate, an entity that incorporates for you, to me with the attachment Resolution Consultants LLC, and it states that this is what I would submit for filing. And does she attach a certificate of formation for Resolution Consultants to be filed? Yes. Other than some of the redactions to the email, is this an exact copy of the email with the attached certificate of formation for Resolution Consultants that you received from Patty at the Delaney Corporation on that day? It is. I offer into evidence Exhibit 215. I have no objection. Accepted into evidence. Thank you, Your Honor. We can now show the jury this. Now, this time, everyone, I will pause. Go ahead and pause and turn on Q&A. I do want to make sure that we've got plenty of time to do a Q&A today with that. So we were able to get some of the technical information in and some of the agreements in. Remember, this this Resolution Consultants, LLC, is what Mr. Cohen used as the shell company in order to make the payments. So that's why this is so important here. So let's go ahead and turn my comments on. There we go. Hello, everybody. Welcome in. Hello. Thank you for joining me today. Appreciate you all coming by. So again, this is Michael Cohen's direct testimony at this point. Just a quick thank you. Thank you. Oh, yes, of course, of course. Yes, hands are doing better. Hello, Navy Vet. Hello. Good morning. Good morning, Hawk. Hello, Fish. Yes, so my hands are doing better for sure. I did want to get just a little chunk of this in. A lot of the next coming pages are going to be just this kind of technical information of looking at the email. Is this what it is? Yes, it is. So once we get past that, we will dive back into further testimony, and I will do that at a later live, but I wanted to get at least a little bit in this morning here. Nice Band-Aids. Oh, thanks. Yeah. Oh, no. It's it's no big deal. Yes, no, I just had a little incident. There were cats involved. No big deal. Oh my gosh. Yes, they will get better soon. They're sore, but definitely will get better soon. It's interesting too because I really do show my hands so much. My hands are really the main character of my story here. So my main character was injured briefly, so I've been like, oh my gosh, what am I gonna do? So I think it's been okay. It's been fine. So they should be healing up pretty good. Cute Band-Aids in the nails, yes. So yeah, I didn't want to put any fake ones on, so I just have my favorite polish on right now. Oh my gosh. Oh, thank you so much. You're the main character. Oh, that's so sweet. Yes, well, they helped me get my message across, I think, which is, just what's on the paper. Yes, good morning. Thank you for all your time. Oh, you're welcome. Absolutely. Need the story of the cat attack. Well, yes, there's really not much of a story to it. I wish it involved something like there were, orphans I was saving from a, negative regime that had come in to try to take over, but nope. Just my cats. This is day 2 of Cohen, yes. So I'm trying to keep Cohen's direct testimony pretty short lives here because it does get pretty repetitive because it's so much of what's this document because Cohen's the one that received the checks and he's the one that wrote in the invoices. So there's quite a bit of repetition. So I will be skipping kind of through a little bit more of Michael Cohen's as our lives go forward. But I thought I wanted to get the real kind of meat, I think, of his testimony before they start going document by document in. What divorce is a great question, Nancy. Great question. Who's divorce? What divorce papers did Michael Cohen have? Like, was he working on somebody's divorce? Like, why is he showing divorce papers to Mr. Trump? Like, divorce papers are private, right? Those are confidential. Thank you so much for doing this. Oh, of course, I'm happy to. How's Trump reacting to Cohen's testimony? Good question. It certainly does make me wonder. Good question about how Mr. Trump is reacting, and I really don't know. I have seen reporting he did go to Barron's graduation yesterday, so good for Barron. The highlighter in the Band-Aid. Oh, I know, right? And I put on my yellow highlighter sweatshirt today. Oh my gosh. I don't know. Good question, Tatiana. Yeah, all that's being asked here, all that Cohen is saying is that he had divorce papers that he was showing to Mr. Trump. That's all we heard about it. So we don't know who it was. Lots of photos. Yeah, it seemed like there was quite a bit of showboating going on with him for the first time. Well, maybe he's trying to, I don't know. I don't know. He didn't go to any of his other kids, but maybe his other kids didn't want him there. Maybe they were like, we're just going to have fun. We don't want you here. So I don't know. It's a bit different, the dynamic that he's got going on. The show. Yes, I agree. 1 out of 5, not bad. I think so. Well, I mean, yeah. Why didn't the reporter document the actual recording? So that's a very great question, Mary. And the reason is because it is admitted in as evidence. And if something's admitted in, like the full document or the full tape or something like that, a video, they do not need to transcribe that. They're just taking down what is said in the courtroom. So if it's not said in the courtroom but it's brought in, they do not need to transcribe it, because it will be admitted into evidence, and so being able to hear that will all be available. The words, every single word on that tape is available as evidence. It's just in a different form, which is allowable. Violating the gag order again. Well, I mean, yeah, I don't, maybe he needs to have that kind of, no, it's a great question, Mary. He needs to have that gag order, like, I don't know, everybody. It's crazy. This is madness. Speaker of the House being a surrogate. Yeah, I mean, it's a good question, too, what the Speaker of the House was doing there, but the reporting is saying he actually didn't go into the courtroom, which I thought was interesting. Ever since I read the amicus brief that he wrote saying that the president's not an officer for purposes of the United States, I kind of have put him to the side then. What day is this one from? So this is from his very first day of testimony, which was May 13th. So that was his first day of testimony. And again, we have had some interesting bits and pieces in, but for the next kind of big chunk, it'll be very repetitive about documents coming in. So I will kind of fast forward through the next part. So in my next reading, we'll be quite a bit further down the road. Didn't want to get stuck in the courtroom. I agree. I was so worried that they'd be. Yeah. Do you say he didn't go in the courtroom? That's what I read. I read the reporting said that the speaker did not actually go into the courtroom. So I am absolutely okay with being completely wrong, but that was the reporting that I had seen. So it's a crazy, scary time. Oh, yes. It certainly can be. It certainly can be. Do you think the defense will bring the bodyguard in? Great question. And I think that would be very, very helpful to have the bodyguard come in. But the cross-examination, I think, would be troubling. I think they could take some pretty big hits on it. So I'm not sure. I still don't know why the state didn't call the bodyguard and Wesselberg. Those two, and I've said it before, I think those two are pivotal pieces to the foundation here for keeping us informed. Oh, you're welcome. So I think they're important, but, the state weighed the pros and cons and decided not to. So there must have been some pretty big cons. But then if defense calls them in, that's a different story. So the cross-examination. Did he have Secret Service at that time? No. So this was before. Yeah, that's a great question. This was before all of that. This was the interference. I can't think of who the defense is going to bring in. So they're going to bring in people to talk about how NDAs work, is my guess, and why you would set up an NDA. And they may bring in other people who have been in similar situations. His whole shtick, which, for good or bad, Mr. Blanche's, the defense's entire thing, if you go back to opening statements and their questioning, is that there's no crime here, that, an NDA is fine, that nothing was done that was wrong. So for them, they're going to be pulling in witnesses to show that there was no violation, as opposed to, yes, there was a violation, but it wasn't me, which is very typical. Or, yes, there was a violation, but it wasn't that bad. There's usually some kind of like, well, yes, there was harm done, but this is why, or somebody else did it, or it really wasn't that bad. But instead of going down that route, they're saying, no, there's completely no violation at all. So for needing to do that, they're going to have to pull in people to say that they weren't false business documents, and who created the documents, and what they were for. So yeah, it's an interesting take on it. It's a really interesting take. Shuffling papers. True story, though. Who are they blaming? Well, right now they're not blaming anybody, right? They're just saying Michael Cohen had a bone to pick with Trump. And so he turned over his check stubs and these invoices, and the state decided to make this into a big nothing because they were trying to go after Trump. So, if they're going to try to, I don't even know. I mean, are they going to try to put on people to say that this is all because of Biden? Are they going to try to put on people coming in and being like, out of the Justice Department, like, we didn't want to do this case, and the only reason why it's been brought is because of politics, and, New York is on the take with Biden. I don't know. I mean, that seems to kind of be their theme, but I'm not sure that they would be able to pull witnesses in. The NDA is not a crime. No, no. The NDA was just so that basically they were buying her story. And they're saying, so what? We can buy her story. It's no big deal. And so what? We can buy her story so she doesn't tell people before the campaign. There's nothing wrong with that. Meanwhile, I mean, come on, right? I mean, what kind of an effect would it have? Hope you're okay. Yeah, I am. That's what Trump does. He never admits any wrong. Well, right, exactly. So, people do NDAs all the time. They buy stories all the time. Maybe other magazines, like, do you buy stories? Yes. And, what do your NDAs say? Same thing. And do you ever review your checks? No. And do you ever review your invoices? No. We leave it all up to the lawyers and, kind of that kind of stuff is what I'm assuming. No, I don't think anybody's going to have to do any kind of testing before the debates. Oh, that's so funny. That would be really interesting. Yes, no, I just had an unfortunate incident and there were cats involved. So, no worries, everybody, no worries. Thank you for taking the time. Oh, of course. Does the prosecution have to prove the money to pay Stormy Daniels off was campaign funds? So it seems like where the money came from, how it was moved. So, I mean, we know the money came from Michael Cohen, right? So the money came from Michael Cohen. He took out home equity, basically, and then transferred it to the lawyer. So who gave it to Stormy Daniels. But the question is then, well, not only that, but what was the purpose? Because if the purpose was for some kind of gratuity, I don't want to use that word, but some kind of benefit for the campaign, then it has to be designated, right? So if we say I gave her $130,000 in order to help the campaign, you have to write that down, even if it's for whatever reason. So it's not specifically from the funds, it's what the purpose of it was for. Cat scratch fever. Yes, I've been careful. I'm in the clear for the cat scratch fever. I'm in the clear, but thank you so much for asking about that. I've learned a lot about that the last couple days. So take out a home loan. Yeah, I mean home equity. He pulled it in through his bank. Is what he did. So he pulled that money in and then sent it to the lawyer. But again, the thing is, if you receive something to benefit your campaign, it doesn't matter what it is, you have to write it down. It doesn't mean that it's illegal to have that come in. It means that you have to write it down. And if you don't declare what you've been given as benefits for your campaign, now we're in the area of campaign law issues. Yes, I'm mending. I'm for sure mending. Yeah. Yes, no. Didn't he have money? Well, it's a good question. And the other thing too, though, was they're saying too, AMI had paid $35,000 to the doorman and $150,000 to Karen McDougal. And he did that for benefits to his campaign. He did that in order for him to receive a benefit. So, that's where AMI started to feel uncomfortable. Like, wait a minute, we're actually giving a benefit into the campaign and not declaring it as a campaign expense. That is my neighbor's motorcycle, just in case anyone's wondering what that loud noise is. Who tried to eat you, my cats. Right, exactly. Campaign finance violations. Right. So, and you see a lot of reports like all these companies are giving, PACs and through all of these different modes, giving basically unlimited funds to campaigns. Like, fine, great. That's where we're at in the world. Thank you so much, Citizens United. But you still have to write it down. You still have to write it down. If you don't write it down as a benefit, then, you're going to get into trouble. And that's what happened there. Yeah, that's what happened. So he didn't write it down, and then by actually writing it as something other than what it was, because he was saying it was for legal expenses. It was not legal expenses. It was for him to pay someone so her story didn't get out, so it didn't negatively affect the campaign. So that's like a benefit to the campaign. So by writing it down as legal expenses and paying Cohen back the way that he did with that special increase extra to Cohen, that was another issue. I need to hold a cat trial regarding the incident. I don't know. I think they felt bad though. They both slept, or like both sleeping on top of me last night. So I think they had some. I think they had some guilt, but they're cats, so who knows? Thank you for explaining. I'm happy to. Yeah. It's simple to understand that using the money they gave them to hide things. Right. And you got to write it down. I mean, again, in the U.S., everyone, here's the key to it. In the U.S., you can do anything, pretty much. I mean, we've got some rules, but you can, when it comes to campaign finances after Citizen United, you can do what you want, but we want to see it. We want to see it. We want to see all your good, your bad, and your ugly. And so long as you show it, as long as you declare it, you write this down, and you don't try to, lie about it, you're probably going to be okay. Which, how weird is that? But if you hide it and try to cover it up, we have laws against that. Oh my gosh. So, yes, indeed. They are certain sentience for sure. So that's really what the trick is. Are the cats really finicky? They're really not. I think we've got some stressors going on right now for the cats. The cats are under some anxiety. They've got some anxiety right now. So we have they're fine. We've got a fox family in our backyard. And so that I think is really stressing them out right now. And so the timing was just really bad. So yeah, Pearl would not feel bad at all. No, she doesn't feel bad. No, she'd set my house on fire and not feel bad about it. Yes, the mowers, lots of loud music. Everything is kind of weird right now. So there's all kinds of things. When you go live again, yes. So, right. So I will absolutely, for sure, be back tomorrow, Sunday at 7 o'clock Central. And that is my Sub Chat Sunday Live. So I was worried today I wouldn't be able to go tonight. That's why I came on today earlier than normal, because I wanted to make sure I got one in. So I try to give a heads up about 2 hours before I go. So I try to do a post before that. This is a little bit earlier. Usually I go at 12 o'clock, but things just worked out for me to go at 11 today. So usually the time that I go is 7 o'clock Central in the evenings. And a couple times a week, I go a little earlier around this lunch hour period. So if you're wondering if I'm going to go live again, just come back, check out and see if I've posted anything kind of around that 7 o'clock time zone. And if I haven't, then or I should have. Even if I don't go, I will post unless I've announced it here. Yeah, she got me. She got me. Yeah, the motorcycles, the chainsaws, the mowers, the foxes. I mean, there's stress going on, Not so much, we're not going to a therapist, but, I can see why they'd be stressed. And I was kind of in their safe spot. They like to hide under the table. And I kind of was in their area. So I'm in the central time zone for me. So anything I do will always be within that central time zone. So it'll be 7 o'clock central for me. So 8 o'clock Eastern, 5 o'clock Western. Is that right? I always forget if it's 2 hours ahead or 2 hours behind. I always forget, but you know what I mean? Central. Yep, you got it. Yep. Cat there. Well, there's some people that go and do the crystals and stuff, but 5 p.m. Pacific. Okay, great. Thank you, Kristen. Thank you, Stephanie. Okay, great. Yes. Oh, I appreciate that. Yes. I think it's just, I think they're just stressed out right now. So, puzzle piece. Hold on. Oh no, did my bandaged fingers make it? Oh, they did. Phew. Texas. Okay, yeah, I got you then. I got you then. So yeah, I will see what we can do. Now, I'm not going to be able to come back on tonight. I know I can't do two in one day and then do also a live the following day. So I won't be able to come back on for tonight, but I will definitely be back tomorrow at 7 Central. And if for some reason I'm able to come back on around this noon time tomorrow, I will. So just kind of watch for that. A liberal text in that, well, whichever. It's okay. It's all right. There's no judgment here. It's okay. That's absolutely fine. Absolutely. I'm originally from Texas, so I know how it goes. I know how it goes on all fronts. So yes, so you all have a wonderful day too. I will go ahead and sign off for now, and I will be prepping this. Yes, so I will kind of be fast forwarding us in case you're wondering what tomorrow will be. I will fast forward through some of this, some of his direct where it's just, what's this document? Okay, what's this document? And finish up. Now, I've got, 200 pages here of his direct still before we get into his cross. So I still have quite a bit of his direct, but I will be kind of pulling sections out from this point on. We kind of have hit the point now where I think it's okay to just kind of hunt and peck through his direct in order to pull out the key points. But the first part of his direct I thought was so important to really go at it line by line, but we will be skipping along through it here a bit quicker on Sunday. So yes, I will be back again tomorrow, everyone, and I hope you all have a wonderful rest of your day, and make sure that you we'll have to skip some. We'll have to skip through some of it. But now I think everyone's got a good feel for what it's going to be like. So with that, I will be back for sure tomorrow, everyone. So just take a look, and I will have things posted as soon as possible. And as always, thank you, moderators. So take care, everyone. Have a great rest.